What's up, everybody, and welcome to my weekly live Q&A, episode 35. My name is Danny Segura. As you guys may know me, I'm a mixed martial arts reporter for MMAJunkie.com. And yes, this is my weekly live Q&A where I answer all your questions regarding the combat sports world and beyond. So welcome, everybody, on this Tuesday morning. Happy to be here. Happy for the time change. I know last week's was at 7:30, so a little bit different, but yeah, we're back at our normal schedule. Obviously, with my normal schedule being back on, so I appreciate you guys for adjusting last week's time to accommodate my schedule. And yeah, so from now on, I think we should be clear about the 10:30 a.m. Mark on Tuesdays. But anyways. For those that are new to this program, this is very simple. You guys ask questions, I answer them. There's two ways of asking questions. One via Twitter, which that thing's close, kind of like the Gulag. The Gulag's close right now. You guys ask questions. It's preliminary questions. I usually throw out the tweet where you guys can submit questions and thread them about 24 hours in advance, maybe a little less, but I threw it in the afternoon yesterday. And yeah, the second way to throw questions, it's on the YouTube live chat. That will get answered in the later part of this video. So Twitter gets priority here. All right. So again, if you didn't get to ask questions on Twitter, all good. Throw them on the YouTube live chat. I already see a few people are throwing in some stuff. And I'll get to it in the later part of this video. So anyways, a lot going on in this combat sports world. Obviously, we just wrapped up UFC 253. A pay-per-view headlined by Adesanya versus Paulo Costa, and a lot of good fights, a lot of interesting results went on that night. Obviously, two champions actually left that night, with the middleweight division and the light heavyweight division being up for grabs that night. And then this weekend we got a pretty good fight night. It's an actual ESPN fight night with Holm, former champion, taking on rising contender Irene Aldana in the main event. And then below that, there's a bunch of good fights. So pretty good card there. And then, you know, beyond that, obviously in the combat sports world, there's always going on a lot of crazy news, right? So plenty to talk about. As you guys could see, I have a little bit of a different setup today. I added all this stuff, right? Yeah. I added a little bit of things here, and as you guys can see, this is actually the same scarf from this one right here, from the MMA Hour, when Luke and I were doing the MMA Hour. So I kept that. Also the aguardiente. Now notice it's a little bit gone. I drank a good amount of it throughout the last year or so, but kept enough just to keep good weight on it. And yeah, it's cheap, shitty aguardiente, but it's got a little bit of significance, I guess. And then we got my fearless leader right here, Diego Simeone, leading Atletico, who's looking very, very good. Very good team. And obviously here, the Atletico scarf. Got to represent, as much as I can. And what else? Then I added a bunch of old credentials I had here in Florida. I usually don't keep those. I know a lot of media members keep those as kind of like a souvenir, which is very cool. But I kind of just never really did. And most of them that I've been to, I've thrown them away. But, there's always a few that either stay in my bags or for whatever reason I keep them. And so, yeah, I got a few here. A few interesting ones. So check this out. This was in New York for Khabib versus Max Holloway, a fight that never happened. But there it is, both of their faces. It was a fight that was briefly going to happen. Also, Yoni and Jacek versus Rosa Mayunis too. Khabib ended up fighting Ally Quinta for that card. I think it was UFC 223, if I'm not mistaken. And then I got also a few other interesting ones. I've always bragged about this one. This is a local show, Fight Time Promotions. I don't even know if the promotion's still around. Maybe. Nico Price right here, early 20s. Nico Price. He fought Michael Lilly, a guy that in the Florida scene at the time was a big deal, and it was like one of the craziest fights I've ever seen live. Till this day, I can't find it on YouTube, but I've talked about it multiple times in my live chats. How coming up as a media member in the South Florida scene, it was very cool because I got to see a lot of cool shit, man. And a lot of guys that went on to become something. Like, for example, Kamaru Usman has only had one professional defeat. I was there. I saw that fight. He actually lost to Alex Caceres' older brother, Jose Caceres. So I was there to witness that, and then you think, oh man, this guy did not look good at all, and then he becomes UFC welterweight champion over time. And then I got a few other credentials like that that are pretty cool. I got one World Series here with Justin Gaethje when he took on, I think, Rich Petishnock. I covered all of Gaethje's rise to the World Series of Fighting till he became champion. I interviewed him post him winning the belt at World Series, so that was pretty cool. So again, you get to experience those kind of cool moments where like you guys and ladies that are coming up in the scene, and then they make it big, and you're like, oh shit, I was there when you were starting. So that's kind of tight. But anyways, I know I'm kind of going on a rant here. Let's get started. Not that many Twitter questions today, so I will have to rely on the YouTubers to push the live chat here. So again, if you got questions, throw them on the YouTube live chat. All right, so it's become sort of a tradition here so far to get this thing started with 8 Paths of Wokeness, the biggest troll on this program, the biggest Dustin hater on this program as well. Now, he asked like a really weird question. It was extremely long. It was like 3 or 4 tweets that linked to like another tweet from like last week or something. So I'm not able to feature everything. So I just featured kind of one that encapsulates what he wants to talk about, which is weird. We're starting this thing off with Israel Adesanya's tit. Anyways, he says, I asked about Izzy's right pectoral muscle on a tweet from Homeboy from ESPN. I don't know who that is. Guessing Ariel or someone, I don't know. And 2 dudes had a long argument about what it was. They're still arguing now in my mentions. They're both talking in absolutes, but I have no clue. It was for sure odd to see. So anyways, he went on to talk about that Israel Adesanya's right pectoral muscle. I caught on to that. I wasn't checking Twitter. So like usually for like main event fights or like a big co-main event, I kind of zone out a little bit. Obviously, if I have stuff on my plate regarding work-wise, I'll take care of that, obviously. But as far as like being on Twitter and seeing what people are saying, like I'm concentrated on the fight. I want to see every single second of the fight, from the stare down, from the body language. I kind of like, I don't read too much into that, but I like witnessing it all, and the actual fight. I like to see every single second of it. So I caught onto it and I tweeted about it. But I thought maybe I was going to be one of the first ones that caught onto it, or maybe I thought I was being weird, and I even said something like, I don't know if I'm off here, but I'm looking at this. And then I sent that out. And then after round 1, I go onto Twitter and I check like fighters, media members, fans, like everyone's talking about it even before I tweeted it out. So clearly people noticed. I also had friends texting me like, yo, what's going on with Israel Adesanya's pectoral muscle? So yeah, it was definitely weird to see. It definitely looked off. And something I did notice, and from that point on, I started, keeping a close eye on the fight. He really wasn't throwing his right at all. I mean, he was really just jabbing, throwing kicks to the legs, and then high kicks. And then if you wanted to get some sort of hook in, obviously it's maybe you don't really want to lead with a left hook, right? You want to lead with your jab. So then he was switching stances so that his right hand was leading, and then he would throw the left hook. But the right hand was not being thrown. I think it got thrown in the final combinations when he was trying to finish the fight. But that's usual. That's very usual for a fighter to be injured and go against the injury when the time comes, right? Like for example, a good example is when Rich Franklin knocked out Chuck Liddell with a broken forearm, right? The whole time when he broke it, he wasn't really throwing it, but when he saw the chance to knock out Liddell, he threw it and he knocked him out. So anyways, I'm not saying that Izzy was injured, but it certainly looked like it was maybe some sort of tear. I mean, I'm no doctor. Maybe it's nothing, but it's something I haven't noticed in other fights as well. I think if it would have been a thing where it's been present in other bouts, I think people would have noticed. So who knows? Or I mean, I don't know. And then somebody asked them at the presser, like, yo, people were talking about your right pectoral muscle, and he replied to just what I said at the beginning, like, why are they looking at my tits, and dismissed it. So he didn't really, and there was no follow-up there from the reporter as far as like, so is there an injury or not, or anything like that? So I mean, it got dismissed, but so I don't know. Maybe we're reading too much into it. I have no idea, but yeah, I don't know. It's a weird question. Certainly something was there. It looked off, but it could be a million things. But I wouldn't rule out maybe an injury or something. And knowing Israel Adesanya, with the type of fighter that he is, he probably wouldn't make excuses even in victory and say how he was injured and all that. So it'd be on brand. So who knows? Who knows? Who really knows? All right, let's go to question number 2. The Seaside, back at it again. Who could Adesanya fight outside of his division? Good question. Um, so Adesanya is an interesting fighter right now because a lot of people are wanting him to. A lot of people want him to fight, at light heavyweight already, especially John Jones, because there's some rivalry there. I remember back in the day, and this is not even that long ago, but at some point in the UFC, there wasn't much of skipping around weight classes. Usually, fighters stuck to one weight class, and they fought in that weight class, and that's it. They didn't move up, they didn't move down. That was their lifelong weight class, and they would retire in that weight class. Very much like we see today with jobs, right? Back in the day, I think, with my parents and certainly the boomers, right? Those people would like stick with one company and be with one company like, 20, 30 years, right? Basically their entire lives, maybe 15, and hop on to another one. But lately we've seen, especially with my generation, millennials, that millennials like to hop around. They don't like to stick around a place for too long. So, they work maybe like 4 or 5 years in one place, hop to another, a year or two, like that. And from personal experience, I mean, I've switched jobs. I've done that. And then, I know tons of friends that have too. So I don't know if it's like a generational thing, like, if that kind of bled into fighting in the sense of, hey, let me try how I do over here, and kind of being more willing to take a little bit more risks. I don't know. But anyways, I remember a time where that wasn't really a thing, right? Changing weight classes. And now all of a sudden it's like you win a title and it's like, all right, what other champion can you fight? That seems to be the thing. I don't like it at all. I kind of like for a fighter to establish some sort of reign and stick around the weight class for some time. Part of that is because the fighter develops, I think, most of the legacy doing that, to be quite honest. I mean, being champ, challenging for other belts is nice, but it's something that's very at the moment, right? And if things that are very at the moment don't really paint the picture on who that person is as a whole, right? I mean, you can have one really good night and then choke for the rest of your career. Who knows? But a nice long and consecutive title reign really paints a good picture of who that person is as a champion, how they carry themselves outside, how they deal with the pressure of being a champion, how they deal with the different challenges that their weight class presents, right? Because each contender brings something new. Their ability to remain relevant, right? Despite everyone studying and basically doing their best to outdate your style, keeping relevant. And that's why I think GSP is the GOAT. So I'd kind of like to see the same thing with Adesanya. I think there's plenty of contenders at 185 for him to stick around, defend his belt, have very big fights and interesting fights without having to move up a weight class and sort of go that route. And I think he's on that. I mean, I asked him that in the media day leading up to this fight. I asked him that precisely. I'm like, so what about John Jones? He's moving up to heavyweight. Is that kind of dead, or is that something you still want to pursue? And he's like, oh, no, I still want that fight for sure. I still want John Jones on my list. But what did Anderson Silva do? What did John Jones do, he said. And part of that is defend the belt and establish a legacy and establish a reign. And I'm going to do that first before I move up in weight classes. And he made a great point. Look at John Jones. We regard him as one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time. And I think if there wasn't those PD sort of asterisk there, I think a lot more people would be thinking that he's the greatest of all time. And one of the reasons is because he's been at 205 pounds for a really long time. He became champion in 2011? So really close to a decade of dominating a weight class, right? and that certainly has gave him a certain aura and a certain prestige that comes with being a champion at a weight class for a really long time. So he should do that. He should do that. Defend the belt at 185 pounds, and then see what's available at 205 pounds eventually. Something I'd like to see, and I know the UFC is kind of like, what's the biggest possible fight we can do right now? That seems to be the direction they're going to at this point in time with their matchmaking. I mean, we've seen that for the last few years, but something I'd like to see them pick back on, and just letting cook things a little longer. You know, don't always go for the straight kill. I mean, one of the things that I really enjoyed about Anderson Silva's reign was that whenever he went up to 205 pounds, it was a big deal, right? Because it was a changing weight classes from a champion. But he never took on the top guys, right? He took on Stephan Bonner, and he took out James Irving. Two very, very tough guys. Two UFC caliber guys, certainly at the time. Two solid guys. I mean, they were, I mean, at the time they weren't rankings, but they had to be at least in the top 15. And I think that's interesting. And it's a way to, like, you know, keep the champion active if the champion wants to remain active. And if there's no contenders ready, look, just have a sort of one-off at 205 pounds. It doesn't cost you your belt. And, you know, a fairly winnable fight, right? I'm not saying put him against the easiest fight at 205 pounds, but I certainly like to see him against a few names at 205 just for fun. Don't fight the champion. Create some mystique about what you can do at 205 pounds, and then eventually have a big fight there. So I'm looking at the rankings right now. Light heavyweight. I mean, right now at the moment there aren't like super interesting names, but let's see. I mean, if Johnny Walker goes in like a little fun streak, you wouldn't be interested in seeing Adesanya, Johnny Walker, 205 pounds. That'd be kind of fun. Just fun fights like that, and kind of become over time a contender there. You know, I think that'd be very interesting. But anyways, to answer your question, who could he fight outside of his division? Even heavyweight, shit. Some heavyweight fights would be interesting. Like on Arlovsky or something like that. I don't know. But to answer your questions, at this point in time, who could Adesanya fight outside of his division? No one. I think the biggest thing right now is to defend the title. Ask me that question, the Seaside, maybe a year from now or something, once we see Adesanya rack up some title defenses. Right now, I'd just like him to stick at 185. All right, this is the last Twitter question. So remember, if you got questions, throw them on the YouTube live chat, and I will be answering those after this one. So yeah. Enjoy my coffee here. All right. Michael Terrell says, I would rather talk Holmes versus Adesanya. It's early. I would rather talk Holm versus Aldana, but McGregor seems to steal the headlines no matter who he's fighting. As a journalist, do you ever get tired of Conor McGregor shadowing actual events? Good question. So Conor McGregor took to Twitter yesterday and basically proposed an exhibition match. He probably tweeted other things. Do I even follow him? I'm not really sure. He probably proposed many other things as well. But one of the big things that I saw circle on Twitter was that he proposed an exhibition match with Dustin Poirier in Dublin, December 12th. I don't know how realistic that is. I'm pretty sure it's not realistic at all. I don't think they can do an exhibition MMA match, MMA fight, without the UFC's permission. I don't know. But again, it's a weird line. I guess you would have to talk to a lawyer to find out the exact line of what's game and not game. Because, like, what if you do sparring and you just film it, you stream it? Fighters spar all the time, right? They're training partners. They post videos on Instagram all the time, sometimes doing that. What if you just post a whole one and make it a little bit more presentable? Maybe get somebody in there to kind of make sure it's clean and all that. Like, I don't know. Is that game? And it's a weird question. That's more for a lawyer question to, like, look at the terms of what actually defines a professional contest. I guess it would have to be sanctioned, right? So I guess that's one of the factors that would determine that for sure. But yeah, it's all interesting. But anyways, yeah, he went on a rant, and the Diamond Dustin Poirier replied, and it seems they're all in. I don't know how likely that is. Probably not very likely, but that seems to be the thing. And yeah, that blew up. It wasn't like an actual tweet, it was replies. So when you reply to someone, it's less likely to be on your timeline than an actual post. So, and even then, like, his shit was blowing up, obviously, because there was a lot of engagement between him and Dustin Poirier. And that is kind of drowning everything else, because everyone's like, oh shit, like, this is obviously a big deal. And we're just coming off Dana White basically saying that Conor McGregor broke the man code by posting their DM conversation on Instagram. So there's kind of some friction there. And then Conor McGregor comes out here and proposes a fight. So I get it. I get why it's dominating the headlines. I get why this would drown out other things as well. And to be honest, like, my job is to cover this, right? And that's what I'm going to do. So I'm not really bothered by it. I think if it's legit, I think this is kind of like an interesting storyline that's developing. So that's why I'm not really bothered by it. But I would say I was kind of bothered by it. Not really bothered, but there was certainly a Conor McGregor fatigue at one point when he was not fighting at all. And he was just pretty much kept calling out people every weekend that there was fights and commenting on them. And I think people even called him out one time being like, yo, why are you doing this? Like, stop. Like a fan. And he replied, he's like, what? I can't comment on the sport that I love and watch. Like, everyone goes on Twitter and comments. And that's fair because, you look at Fight Night and, fighters are constantly talking about the fight. So I get it as well. But his was a little different because he was calling out fighters. So it made a little bit of news. But over time, it got old. It's like, all right, dude, like, how many fighters can you possibly call out without fighting? That to me was kind of annoying because it's like, all right, man, either you fight or you don't. And if you're not, then chill, enjoy your break, right? Do whatever you need to do. But don't angle for fights if you're not going to fight. So that kind of was annoying. But in this case, like, Conor McGregor clearly looks like he wants to fight. He planned this year, 2020, to be a season. He wanted 4 fights. We saw in those DMs with Dana White that they were private. Like, he was angling for so many fights against anybody. And he wanted to fight. He fought in January. He wanted to fight in May against anybody. Then he wanted to fight in July. No, the UFC wanted him to fight in July. Then he wanted to fight in August. And then at the end of the year. So 4 fights. That would have been interesting. And I think the Diego fight, he was pitching it because Diego's a big name. Obviously, he has a big following. He's a nice name to have on your resume. Obviously, winner of the Ultimate Fighter Season 1. Just all around basically a legend of the sport, but his skills are not really there anymore. He's an older fighter. So in that sense, it didn't make sense. But as far as name value-wise, I can see why McGregor wanted that fight. And also, out of just wanting to stay busy, out of just wanting to, like, have this momentum of, like, look, I'm an active fighter. Look, I'm here fighting absolutely anybody and just fighting, period. So I think this case is a little bit different. So that's why maybe I'm not that bothered, because we see a McGregor that wants to fight. We see a McGregor that is eager to return to competition. It's just the pandemic has really kind of screwed him over on that, given the fact that he's such a big name and he brings so much money at the gate. We're talking about millions of dollars that it's kind of hard to let go of that and have a fight without a crowd, right? So, but yeah, no, I'm not really all that annoyed by it, to be honest. Maybe a few years ago I would have been, but all right. Now this is the time where we go over to the YouTube live chat and I answer those questions there. So again, if you got questions, throw them in the YouTube live chat and I'll get to them in a minute. All right, let's see here. James Fallon Cote. Am I crazy for wanting Colby versus Wonderboy? I would say so, yeah. Yeah, it seems like a fun fight, kind of. It's not a fight that I'm dying to see. Not necessarily a fight that promotionally I'm dying to see as well, as far as like a build-up. I think Colby's either waits for a title shot or the Masvidal fight makes a lot of sense. I think the Jorge Masvidal fight makes tons of sense. So I think that's what's next for Colby. If they were to book a fight with Wonderboy Thompson, I wouldn't hate it. It would kind of somewhat make sense with the rankings. He did just pick up a win over Tyron Woodley, but prior to that, he was coming off a loss to Kamaru Usman. So keep that in mind. Like, it's not like he's in a crazy streak. So to go out there and say he absolutely deserves a rematch, that's kind of not true. Leon Edwards probably deserves a rematch. Not a rematch. Or, yeah, a rematch because he fought Kamaru Usman before Colby Covington. Just because he's in a crazier streak, right? I would actually be more interested in watching Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington than Wonderboy. So in my opinion, for Covington is either Jorge Masvidal, rematch with Kamaru Usman, or Leon Edwards. And in the order, it would be Masvidal, Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman. That's how I would rank those fights. And then probably Wonderboy would be 4th or 5th, I would say. Not the craziest idea, James, but in my opinion, I would say that there are better bouts that make more sense for Colby Covington. And whoever he fights as well. I think Wonderboy's coming off a win over Vicente Luque in November. I was there. Prior to that, he had a pretty bad defeat against Anthony Pettis. So again, the dude just needs to kind of get back into his groove, right? Certainly a win over Luque was nice. But I'd like to see him get maybe 1 or 2 more before we can start pitting him with the top contender and maybe be in a title eliminator bout. Mystic Gamer, what are the chances Khamzat fights Leon next? LOL. I think it will be competitive. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I think the chances, I think they're low. But to be honest, like, not to be a dick, but like, who's making more headlines? Who's more popular right now at this moment? Khamzat, Shimaev, or Leon Edwards? Maybe Khamzat. I think if you look at their social media, probably Leon Edwards has a bigger social media following. But you got to keep in mind he's been around for longer. So just over the years, you build up fans and stuff. So let me see Leon. And social media is not the best way to determine popularity. It's a way, but not the best way. Look at Brock Lesnar. I don't even think that dude has social media, and he's fucking huge. So Leon Edwards has 44,000 followers on Twitter. Khamzat has... Wow. Khamzat has 76,000, so almost double. Now, Twitter is a little bit of a weird platform. I think Instagram is... I feel like everyone has Instagram. Not everyone has Twitter, though. Let me see here. Khamzat. I think Instagram is a good determination of... Well, I guess... Nah, it all depends. Dude, fuck. Khamzat Shimaev almost has... He has 784,000 followers. Leon Edwards, he can't possibly have that many. He has 79,000. Yeah, so I guess you could say that Khamzat is a more popular fighter than Leon Edwards right this moment. And he's got, 3 fights in the UFC? Leon is on an 8-fight win streak in the promotion alone. This business is crazy. This business is crazy as far as that goes. It's unfair because Leon Edwards deserves to be talked about, what he is, who is a really good fighter. He's one of the best fighters at 170 pounds and clearly a threat to the title because that's what Leon Edwards is. That's who he is. He's a threat to the title, and he's one of the better fighters in that weight class. But because he's not popular, maybe people don't talk about him as much and maybe don't give him the respect that he deserves. And about so do I think that's crazy? What are the chances of that? I think they're very low. It would be a big fight though, but I think they're very low. And as far as would it be competitive, I would say maybe. I would say I don't know. I would certainly favor Leon Edwards by a lot going into that fight just because we know a lot more about him, and what we know about him is really fucking good. Whereas Khamzat, he's got that knockout over Gerald, but Gerald is certainly not on the same level that Leon Edwards is, respective of weight class. So So you see Khamzat having all this success and kind of killing it, but keep in mind who's he doing it against. Very good fighters, don't get me wrong, UFC caliber fighters, especially against Gerald, who's legit. But just Leon Edwards is at another level. I mean, that guy is a top 3 in a division, in one of the best divisions in the UFC, and that's a very hard thing to do. So I would certainly favor Leon Edwards in a fight against Khamzat, for sure. And yeah, I think, to be honest, I think it'd be kind of disrespectful if they put him against Khamzat. Leon deserves a big fight, man. He really does. All right, James Fallon Cote back at it again. Who would you like Demian Maia to fight for his last bout? I'm not sure. He's got one fight remaining. I think he's probably got a few more. I know a while back he said he wanted to fight out his contract and basically be done with the UFC. That was maybe like a fight or two ago. And the standard UFC contract is 4 fights. So I would assume he's got... All right, so... Okay, so he said he had 3 more fights on his contract in June of 2019. That's when he was going to fight Lyman Good. So let me see. And he's had several fights since. So let's see. So he definitely had to sign a new deal because leading up to Lyman Good fight, he said he had 3 fights left, and since he's fought 4. So around the Ben Askren or maybe the Rocco Martin fight, because they often come to fighters and offer them a new contract before their current contract expires. So he's probably on a new deal right now. So I would assume he's maybe got like two or three fights left. Of course, he can always not honor all of them and just fight the fights that he wants, right? He doesn't have to fight all of them. But yeah, I don't know. I don't get the sense that Demian Maia is going to be one and done. So there's a few names I'd like to see him against. I think Diego Sanchez fight makes sense for both. Both guys kind of want the fight. Both guys have said on social media that they really want the fight. And I know Diego didn't look good at all in his last bout. And I know the whole school of self-awareness and Joshua Fabia shit seems kind of sketchy. Doesn't seem too legit, to be quite frank. I'm sure maybe it's good for like a spiritual level. He certainly seems to be a lot happier. Seems to be a lot more zen. I'm not questioning that. I'm not even questioning that. Look, Joshua's probably a great dude, but as far as his like coaching abilities, like I don't know how much he's doing there. Because keep in mind, Diego Sanchez is a great fighter. Skill-wise, he's a great fighter. He's a very, very good fighter. So he's just fighting off the base of what he's built for so many years, right? And that's pretty fucking good. Like, Diego Sanchez could, like, stop fighting today, be 50 years old, right? And stop training and everything. And in 12 years when he's 50, he could get into a street fight, and you don't think he's going to know how to fight? Like, of course, dude. He's going to take somebody down and slam him on the fucking head. The dude's good, man. It's just, his body's maybe not what it once used to. And, he's been through a lot of wars, and he's an older fighter. And keep in mind, he's fighting in the best organization on the planet. So, you're always going to look worse than you actually are, obviously, because you're being compared to the very best. So anyways, I say that because, yes, I know he looked bad, but I really do think when he fights grapplers, he shines. Like, when he fights straight grapplers, it really looks like, he can be in, not prime, but he can be very, very competitive. I mean, look at the Mickey Gall fight. Somebody who's just very jiu-jitsu, right? Completely destroyed him. If you also look at the, what's the other guy, that British guy? Pulling up his record right now. Paul Craig, is it? No, not Paul Craig. Craig White? Something like that? Yeah, Craig White. Craig White, another very good jiu-jitsu guy. with serious jiu-jitsu skills and just managed to ragdoll him, right? So yeah, if you put him against those kinds of fighters, even the Marcin Held fight in 2016, like Marcin Held is good, man. He's a good guy, very good fighter. In Bellator was a contender, very skilled grappler, and he shined there. I remember like Marcin had him in all kinds of heel hooks, and he just couldn't. He just couldn't catch him. I mean, this is a guy that went toe to toe with Marcelo Garcia, one of the greatest grapplers to ever exist, and held his own, right? So that's the kind of matchups that I'd like to see him against. I think he would do well against those type of guys. And look, if he wants to continue fighting, those are the type of fights that I want to see him. I don't want to see him take a beating by Jake Matthews or these other 26-year-olds, right? Like Michel Pereira and others. So Demian Maia would certainly be one of those fights. Good fight for both. Let's see who else I'd like to see Demian Maia match up against. Yeah, just put him up against grapplers. Let's see what other interesting grapplers are at 170. Yeah, I don't know. There actually might not be very. There might not be many matchups for him. Look at violation. Certainly, I think Diego Sanchez is the easiest that comes to mind right now. Let's see here. All right. Let's see. UFC welterweight division, because there's usually a lot of guys that are outside of the rankings that are actually fun fights. Let's see here. Men. Search by weight class. Is there even a filters? Yeah, there we go. Welterweight. Also, this roster that the UFC has is kind of BS. Like, they have a lot of fighters that don't fight for the UFC and haven't fought in the UFC for quite some time. I'm looking at Akiyama right now. Akiyama has been fighting in one championship for how long? Hector Aldana, I don't even think he's in the UFC anymore. Thiago Alves is out there doing BKFC. They need to update this shit, man. Ben Askren is retired. Jesus Christ. All right. Let's see here. Would Cowboy Cerrone be a bad fight? Demian Maia, Cowboy Cerrone? Man, I wouldn't hate it. Demian Maia, Diego Sanchez, Demian Maia. I don't think Jake Ellenberger doesn't even fight anymore. He's still on that list. Jesus, that's how long it runs? How many fighters do they have here that they don't fight? Demian Maia, Mickey Gall? Maybe? Demian Maia. They have Matt Hughes. Come on. Jesus Christ. They have Mike Jackson in this roster. Demian Maia, the Leech. Fuck. That'd be a good fight. That'd be a very, very good fight. The Leech is a stud grappler, very, very stubborn wrestler. That'd be very good. That'd be actually a very interesting fight to see how the two would match up in styles, and also to see how Demian Maia still uses his jiu-jitsu skills and his craftiness to go around the power and sort of the beast that the Leech is, Li Yinglang. That actually be a fantastic fight. So yeah, I would say the Leech versus Demian Maia. The Leech. What am I talking about? The Leech. Demian Maia versus the Leech. Demian Maia versus Diego Sanchez. Bring back, I don't know what the hell happened to Dong Young Kim. I think he fought Demian Maia and beat him already. That'd be kind of interesting as well. James Krause versus Demian Maia. There are some good fights for Demian Maia if you match him up adequately. Let's see here. Court McGee versus Demian Maia. Maybe Court McGee fights this weekend against Carlos Condit. By the way, I talked to Condit last night. I'll have a story on that shortly today on MMAJunkie.com. He had a few things to say about Nick Diaz, so that's coming up. Demian Maia, Bilal Muhammad. Why not? It would be a nice name for Bilal. He deserves a big name, and also grappling-wise, I think it'd be kind of interesting. There's certainly... Dude, Sage Northcutt is on this roster. Are you kidding me? Michel Pereira versus Demian Maia. I mean, there's some fights for him. There are some fun fights for him. It's not all... anyone but Khamzat. I think it'd be interesting. And put him up against guys that, like, again, he could be competitive against. He can offer his big name if the other side were to win as well. But I just don't want to see him in fights that he can just get run over. I don't want to see Demian Maia in those type of fights. So all the guys that I mentioned, the Leech, Bilal Muhammad, all those guys just seem fairly even. And Michel Pereira seem like winnable fights for both. And just makes sense. And I think they'd be fun fights. So there you go. But the Leech versus Demian Maia, that one has a ring to it for sure. All right, we got 15 minutes left. I know I spent a shit ton of time on that question, but I had to answer that. All right, the next question is by Squall91. Was Costa a hype job? He didn't do anything in the fight other than make faces. Is Adesanya just that good? Or a bad night from Costa and he just didn't show up to fight? Great question. So, a lot of people were confused by Paulo Costa's performance. He really had nothing going, and just got wrecked. We gotta call things how they are. He got wrecked. He had no success whatsoever in that fight, anywhere. Really, it was all Adesanya. It was all Adesanya being crafty. It was all Adesanya being patient. It was all Adesanya picking his spots. It was all Adesanya landing the bigger, and really most of the shots, if not all. Paulo Costa just couldn't do anything. He couldn't close the distance, or maybe he didn't even attempt to close the distance. He couldn't get Adesanya guessing, or he couldn't get Adesanya to even respect his power. Nothing. He didn't get anything going in that fight. And this is weird because he's coming off that Joel Romero fight, which was completely the opposite. A guy that was not trigger shy at all. A guy that even to his detriment would actually continue swinging, even though at certain spots he could have been winning, and maybe he could have coasted, maybe he could have been a little smarter, but he still carried on and pushed forward. So very weird performance by Paulo Costa. I don't think he's a hype job. I think there's certainly an element to that. Keep in mind he is being coached by Eric Albarracin, and I'm not trying to talk shit about Eric, but this is a fact. Eric's style is to hype things up as far as the promotion side of things. He can definitely teach you a lot on a technical aspect. He can definitely put together a good camp for you. I mean, he's the coach to many, many legit world-class and champions in the sport. So he's a legit coach. But on top of that, there are many coaches who just sit there and be like, all right, here are the X's and O's. Here's what you need to know. Here's what we need to do. Here's how we're going to train. He can do that. But he also has this side of him that caters to kind of like the pro wrestling aspect, caters to the hype, to the promotion. He kind of understands that and understands media. So he did hype him up a lot. He obviously had him talking and saying certain things, right? Calling Adesanya, comparing him to Usain Bolt, right? And all these other things, right? Throwing him the white belt, all these other things. So all that certainly, like you just see a guy go back and forth with somebody else and talk shit and kind of in spirit match him. You think, okay, this is kind of competitive. And sometimes the spirit can often, like Conor McGregor, even make you think that the person can beat the other guy. Like, say, like the Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor fight. If there was no trash talk, if Conor McGregor didn't do the things that he did, and it was just a fighter that was like, hey, look, I'll take anybody that the UFC wants to give me, and he wasn't, he didn't have that stardom, and then you threw him against Floyd Mayweather, and you would get coaches to kind of, or just people to like look at the matchup and break it down, they'd be like, yeah, totally, Floyd Mayweather's going to run him over. But then, because his spirit seemed much bigger and much stronger and had a bigger presence than Floyd Mayweather's, especially in the build-up and all that, it had some people actually thought that Conor McGregor was going to beat Floyd Mayweather in boxing. So anyways, so there was definitely some sort of hype with Costa, which kind of made things a little bit more even, I think, in perspective against Israel Adesanya. But if you look at it on a technical aspect, I think most people that know about the sport were angling, were siding with Adesanya. I certainly was, and I know many others were as well. Not to take anything away from Costa, but he just seemed to be the better fighter, and turned out to be, right? So I think there's a little bit of height drop involved, but we also got to keep in mind that Costa has beaten legit guys, right? Like, you can't be shitty and get past Joel Romero. That just doesn't happen. You got to be good. So certainly he's not all hype. And I think it was also a combination of him having a bad night. I think it was one of his worst performances. So I think if you were to match him up, several more times, I'd be confident that Adesanya wins. But I would also be confident that it would be a much more competitive fight than the first one. And I think I'd be much more confident in saying that Paulo Costa would have more success than the first one. So I think it's a combination of a bunch of things. I do think Costa had a little bit of hype coming in. I also think he had a bad night. And I also think Israel Adesanya just looked really damn good. So to answer your question, it's a combination of all things. Amy Wee, do you like your chances against Ian McCall? Uncle Creepy, no way. He'll fuck me up any day of the week. Any day of the week. I think I might be a little bigger than him, maybe. I mean, I don't know how he looks, not making flyweight, but I could be 180 pounds, 200 pounds. He'd still fuck me up. Demetrius Johnson could fuck anybody up. Size is not really. If you got the skill, size doesn't really matter a whole lot. Especially fighting average Joes like me. No way. I get fucked up by Ian McCall. All right. Sergeant Blitz. Joao Felix is starting to shine. Benfica forever. Yes, shouts out. Shouts out to Simeone. Shouts out to Atleti. I was so happy with that 6-1 victory over Granada. Granted, Granada is not the best team in the world, but it's a solid team. They've gotten pretty good. But this season, man, a lot of Atletico took so much shit last season. But you had Griezmann, Godin, Rodri, Felipe Luis, Juanfran. Am I missing anybody else? Lucas Hernandez. 6 players in a team that's composed of 11. 6 almost starting players. Juanfran started, Felipe Luis started, Griezmann started, Godin started, right? Lucas Hernandez also had a pretty big role. 6 players left the team. And Atleti just had to rebuild an entire new team. So that first season was a rebuilding season. You can't expect a bunch of brand new players to start clicking. You can't expect a 19-year-old Joao Felix to start killing it right away in a really big team in a far more competitive league, being La Liga than the Portuguese league, right? So again, and even then they still managed to place third, and yeah, it wasn't like the worst season ever, and they had a decent Champions League run. They defeated Liverpool, which is obviously the former champions. And now this season, we're starting to see a team that plays a lot better together, a team that clicks a little bit better, a team that has much better chemistry. Again, we're very early into the season, but that's what it looks like. And Joao Felix looks a lot more comfortable in his role, looks a lot more comfortable with the team, with the style of play, and just clicks better with his teammates. Obviously, has better chemistry now that they've trained and been together a whole season. So I really do feel good. And I know I say this almost every season, but I really do feel very, very good and very positive about this season. I think the team's looking good. We got Suarez. And, yeah, Joao Felix is killing it. Shouts out to Joao. Real quick, how likely is Poirier McGregor exhibition charity match that doesn't involve the UFC? How likely it is? I would say unlikely. Unlikely. I think there has to be something in their contract that forbids them to do that. But again, I'd love to talk to a lawyer about this. Who it's also hard to get your hands on a UFC contract, but People have, and there's certainly a lot of information about UFC contracts out there, but what would be the difference? Like, what if you were to spar someone and film it on IG Live? Like, what if you spar someone on your same weight class that is not really on your team? You can totally do that. You're free to do whatever you want. Then just add an Instagram Live video to it. Then you're add just a homeboy there to stand in the middle and kind of oversee it. Still no official commission. Is that game? I don't know. It seems to be, right? It seems it stops where it becomes a professional contest, right? When there's a governing body sanctioning it, right? So I don't know. It's a weird one, but I would say it's not likely. Are Usman and Colby the biggest threats to Israel at 185 pounds at the moment? Superhuman cardio, and both are elite wrestlers who spam takedown attempts, and no one at 185 currently brings that package to the table. I don't know. I don't think Colby. I don't like Colby's chances at all against Israel Adesanya. Adesanya is just way too big. Colby's striking is not the greatest. His wrestling, it's not bad either. It's good. His wrestling is good, but I don't think it's as dominant, as strong as Usman. If we're talking about if the recipe of success is pinning Israel Adesanya against the cage, I think Usman has a better chance of doing that than Colby Covington. So I would give Usman the better chance, but still the size difference is quite big. So I don't know. I don't like their chances. I think the jump from 170 to 185 is just way too big. A few fighters have been able to do it. Obviously, Robert Whittaker became champion. Kelvin Gastelum has found success in that weight class. Look, if Gastelum gets his shit together, and I'm not saying that he doesn't have his shit together. I'm saying just like if he's able to be a little bit more consistent with his performances. I mean, to this day, he's been Adesanya's toughest fight. I really do think that he could present problems to him, a lot of problems. I mean, he already did. I think his boxing is very, very, very technical, very fundamental. That in itself will sort of cancel out some of the openings that Israel Adesanya creates. And then on top of that, the dude can wrestle. I'd love to see Kelvin Gastelum maybe get a little stronger and kind of go back to his wrestling roots. Not because he doesn't have great boxing, because he really does. But the dude's a little Cain Velasquez. I mean, he really is. And I think he could present a lot of problems to Adesanya, to be honest. I'd like his chances better than Usman's, probably. Maybe. But yeah, we'll see. And as far as anybody else at 185 that could give Adesanya problems, I mean, maybe Robert Whittaker. I'd like to see him, maybe already knowing what he knows, how he fares. Jared Cannonier, I certainly think he's got a good chance. I would put Cannonier at the top of that list, to be quite honest. Especially if he gets past Robert Whittaker, I think he becomes a legit threat to Israel Adesanya. So, no, I think there are many other challengers at 185 that actually pose bigger issues than Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. JG. All right, couple more. What do you think about Costa clamoring for an immediate rematch? I think he's delusional. I agree. No way in hell he's getting an immediate rematch. No way. I'm not faulting him for asking. I mean, he got fucked up and then he got humped by Adesanya there at the end. I'd be pissed. I'd be pissed if I were him. So, I'd be wanting to fight him too, So I get it. I'm not criticizing Costa for it, but there are other deserving contenders. And he didn't have a competitive bout. So no, he doesn't really have a case at all. Pick up some wins. Get your shit together, like he said. Get a nice win streak going and come back at it. Also, Adesanya has a few things to say to his coach. I mean, Adesanya really just... You talk about, sportsmanship and shit. Like, I certainly enjoy watching. It's nice to see sportsmanship. But to be honest, I don't hate the opposite as well. I don't hate rivalries, and I don't hate, Ronda Rousey not shaking Miesha Tate's hand. I don't hate that. That's like pure competitive. That's pure pettiness. and I kind of like it, to be to be quite honest. It's fun. It's fun. And look, at the end of the day, like, this ain't soccer. You know, this ain't football. This ain't basketball. This ain't baseball. This is a fist fight. So there's much worse things that happen in the octagon than, you know, some disrespectful shit outside of it. Obviously, within certain boundaries, right? We've talked about that before. I don't agree with certain things about going about race and religion and stuff like that. So, but yeah, certainly Costa does not deserve an immediate rematch at all. Not anytime soon. All right. Enrique Salazar. Shouts out to Enrique Salazar and shouts out to Chile. I believe that's where he's from. Yes. Hi, Danny. Cheers from Patagonia, Chile. Enrique, long time no talk, my friend. Costa deserves a rematch with Adesanya immediately. Nope, we just went over that. Not at all. Filip Markovic donated to the Super Chat. The Super Chat's open. You guys can donate as well and support this channel. And he says, who do you think Rakic should and or fight or will fight next? So I actually like Rakic's performance a lot against Anthony Smith. A lot of people thought he coasted and he was like, you know, didn't make a statement, and people were kind of, you know, shedding, poo-pooing on his performance. But I thought he did what he needed to do, and I thought he looked extremely dominant. I mean, I saw the commentators. I believe Paul Felder was on that night, and I respect Paul Felder. I like Paul Felder, but I disagreed with him when Rakic was on top of Smith in round 3. He's like, look, you got to get him up. You got to work your hands and put him away and make a statement. It's like, no, dude. No. Smith can knock you out. Smith has striking. Why would you get up and give Smith the only chance that he could win? This is about winning, man. And I know, obviously, making a statement, and I know being crazy in the promotion side, or at least gaining attention in that aspect, is important and a part of it too. But all of that doesn't matter if you're not winning. You can be the best at interviews. You could be the best at hyping a fight. You could be whatever you want. But if you're not winning, you're not going to get anywhere. So that is the basic. That is the bare minimum, the bare minimum standard that you need to meet to become somebody in this sport. And that's winning. And that's what Rakic is doing. So I'm not going to fault him for that. And he did it dominantly too. It's not like he's out there, again, 1-1-2, and I'm just going to coast and run away. No, dude, he was dominating Smith. He was on top of him, right? So I really like this performance. I didn't understand the hate that came with it. And I do believe he's a top player in that division. I think he needs to be in that conversation, and certainly he deserves big names. So Jan Blachowicz is champion. Thiago Santos is fighting Glover Teixeira. The winner of that fight should definitely fight Jan Blachowicz. So that's kind of, we already have that sort of built right there. So that's already setting the line a little bit long. Not long, but there's certainly a line for Rakic to get to that point. So at this point, he just needs to, again, continue fighting, build on that win streak, and need some names. So Dominic Reyes, you know, wouldn't be a bad idea. I know he's coming off a loss, but Dominic Reyes is up there. He's legit. I mean, everyone else is booked or champion, right? So it's a tough spot for Rakic, but certainly one or two. Look, okay, somebody asked me about Anthony Rumble Johnson coming back. Do that. I wonder if they train at the same place. I don't know. But yeah, he just needs a big fight. I don't know exactly what's next for him, to answer your question, Philip. It's kind of tough with the division right now. But certainly someone that needs a big name, someone that is right there in title contention. So I would say the Dominic Reyes fight, or GD's right below him at number 6, Prochaka. So that could make sense. I would say one of those. Nikita Krivlov is fighting Volkan Ozdemir, I believe, right? If Nikita wins, I think maybe that's a fight as well. He's in a tough spot. Given that there's a champion. One of the top contenders is coming off a loss, obviously losing to the champion. And there's already a top contender fight developing in Thiago Santos versus Glover Teixeira. Look, I know timing is kind of poor, but I would just give Thiago Santos the immediate fight, scratch that, and give Glover Teixeira round Rakic, and then have that determine the next number one contender, as we already have a contender in line to fight for the title. That'd be the way to go, but those two are already booked, so you can't go back on that. All right, I'll take a couple more and dip out of here. I appreciate you for donating to the super chat, by the way. JP asked, with a return of Rumble still about 4 months away, who would you like to see Rumble fight in his return? GD sounds fun, but I don't think the timing works. Volkan? So Volkan has got his hands full October 17th against Nikita Krivlov, and Volkan trains with Anthony Rumble Johnson, so that wouldn't make sense. Look, Johnny Walker versus Anthony Rumble Johnson. I mean, I just want to see fun fights. That would make sense. I wouldn't hate that fight. Yeah. It's tough. Again, Thiago Santos, that dude's a scary striker, versus Anthony Rumble Johnson. That would be tons of fun. I'd definitely watch that. Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Johnson. I'd watch that fight as well. Yeah, so there are a couple names. Dominic Reyes, Thiago Santos, Johnny Walker. I like those names. I'd like to see also Rumble Johnson at heavyweight. So Rumble Johnson fought in this South Florida promotion when he got cut from the UFC called CFA. It no longer exists. And he fought Andre Arlovsky in one of their main events. Andre Arlovsky is obviously a former UFC heavyweight champion. At the time, he was much younger and, was a bigger threat than what he is now. And Johnson held his own against a legit heavyweight. So he really does have the power and the skills to compete at heavyweight. I saw the fight. I was there present. And I wouldn't mind seeing Anthony Rumble Johnson at heavyweight as well. I think it'd be fun. I'd love to see John Jones versus Anthony Johnson at some point. Anthony Johnson versus Alistair Overeem. I don't think Anthony Johnson likes Alistair Overeem all that much, so that'd be fun as well. Anthony Johnson versus Cyril Gane. Anthony Johnson versus, there's so many fights. Taito Ivasa. You just keep going down the list. I think there's actually more fun fights for Anthony Johnson at heavyweight than there are at light heavyweight, but I think he wants to return to light heavyweight, so we'll see. All right, I'll do one more and bounce out. All right, this weekend, Holly Holm versus Irene Aldana, the main event of UFC on ESPN 16. Enrique Salazar says, Holly Holm versus Aldana, who will win? I'm going with Aldana. I think maybe a few years ago, the fight would be different. I'd probably go with Holly Holm because Holly Holm was younger and I think looked better a few years ago. And also, Aldana wasn't as good a few years ago. Keep in mind, Aldana has only been fighting professionally for like 8 years. So like a year, 2 years ago is a lot in development, right? But at this point in time, I would say that Holly Holm is still very good. I'm not shitting her. I think she's a fantastic fighter. But I think Holly Holm is maybe not as good as she used to be. She's still very, very good. But I don't think I think she's just had a little bit of a decline, just a little bit, not a whole lot. And I think Aldana has since done this, in her last few bouts. I think Aldana has looked incredible. She entered the UFC already being a good fighter, but in her tenure in the last few years, she's gotten so much better. From her jiu-jitsu and grappling skills defensively, they've gotten a lot more better. She's a big girl for that weight class. She's a girl that could easily fight at 145 and not be small. She's very tall. She's strong. She's very rangy. Uses that range extremely well in her boxing. Her boxing just keeps getting better. She's got very straight punches, very good combinations, sticks to her guns. She won't get out of... She won't stay away from a game plan. She sticks to a game plan. Again, her striking is very, very technical. I think she's got probably some of the best hands in that weight class. It might be Nunes and then maybe her. And against Caitlin Vieira in her last fight in December, she knocked her out in the first round. So all of a sudden, she's starting to develop her power. Obviously through technique, and I think she's just gotten stronger over time. So I really do think this is the best Irene Aldana we've ever seen. I can't say that for Holly Holm. So I think Irene Aldana is going to take the win on Saturday night. I think she's actually going to impress a lot of people. Her style just naturally is a style that proposes a lot of fun fights. Keep in mind, her first fight in the UFC was a fight of the night. She's won a couple fight of the nights and even performance of the night bonuses. So I really do think she's gonna make a statement against Holly Holm on Saturday night, and it's gonna be big enough, especially given that she was supposed to fight on an ESPN Plus platform back in August before the fight got postponed, and now it's on an ESPN. So much bigger stage, still main event. She wins that fight, she makes a statement, she's fighting for the belt. That's how I see it. I really do think this is Irene Aldana's time to shine. So we'll see. Again, I could be extremely wrong. I could be a little bit biased because I've been interviewing her. Obviously, she was on Monday's episode of Hablemos MMA. But I really do have a good feeling about her career, and I do think that she's gonna be able to achieve some great things. So very skilled fighter, and I think she takes a victory on Saturday night. So, anyways, thank you so much for everybody that submitted questions via Twitter. Thank you so much for everyone that also submitted questions via the YouTube live chat. Shout out to Philip for donating to the super chat. Remember, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I have a few stories coming out this week, so make sure you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook right here at Danny Segura TV. I think my Instagram is a little bit more personal. If you guys want to get to know me a little bit more on a personal level, certainly follow me on Instagram. And yeah, obviously as far as like my work and all that goes on Twitter. So yeah, give me a follow, Danny Segura TV. Subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends about it. That's a good way of spreading this program and making sure it continues to grow. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a good week. Have fun watching the fights this weekend. And I'll see you guys next Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. All right? Later.